My daughter Abby's first day of kindergarten was supposed to be a milestone. I had laid out her favorite blue dress with the butterfly buttons. I had packed her lunch in the dinosaur-shaped container she adored, the one with the triceratops head that made her giggle every time I opened it. I had braided her hair in 2 neat plaits, her soft brown curls tucked behind her ears. She had looked up at me with those luminous dark eyes, the ones that held entire galaxies of thought no one else could access, and she had whispered, "Mama, school." 2 words. That was all she said. But to me, those 2 words were a symphony. Abby is 5 years old. She didn't speak until she was 3.5. She doesn't make eye contact easily. She flaps her hands when she's excited and hums to herself when the world gets too loud. The doctors have called it many things over the years: developmental delay, sensory processing disorder, possible autism spectrum, but none of those labels have ever defined my daughter. Not to me. To me, Abby is Abby. She is brilliant and strange and perfect. She can identify every bird species in our backyard by their song alone. She can assemble a 100-piece puzzle faster than I can pour a cup of coffee. She feels things deeply, even if she can't always translate those feelings into words. But she is not, as the school's intake forms had asked, neurotypical. And apparently, to some parents, that was unacceptable. The first notification came at 10:17 a.m., 30 minutes after the kindergarten class had started. I was sitting in my home office, attempting to focus on a client call, when my phone buzzed with a friend request on social media, then another, then a third. All from the same person, a woman named Patricia Ashford-Hale, whose profile picture showed her posed in front of a sprawling white colonial, a Chardonnay glass in one hand and a golden retriever at her feet. I accepted the request, confused. Our children were in the same class, perhaps. She wanted to connect, maybe arrange a play date. I was still formulating this hopeful thought when a video message popped into my inbox. It showed Abby in the classroom, sitting quietly during a group activity, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on something outside the frame. She wasn't disrupting anyone. She wasn't causing a scene. She was just sitting there, being herself. Before I could process the violation of someone filming my daughter without consent, another message arrived. Asterisk, Abby's mom, is your daughter a Down syndrome child? Asterisk. I stared at the screen. My chest tightened. I forced myself to breathe, to respond calmly. Asterisk, my daughter is perfectly healthy. She does not have Down syndrome. Asterisk. I assumed a clear explanation would end the matter. It did not. My phone kept buzzing, notification after notification. I silenced it. A second later, the screen lit up with an unknown number. Abby's mom, I understand. A woman's voice said the instant I answered. She sounded rushed, patronizing, utterly without empathy. Denial is just a phase, but we need to face reality, don't we? Your daughter sits there like a statue. She doesn't talk. If she's not Down syndrome, then what is she? Excuse me. Kindergarten is a social environment. She cut me off, her voice rising. A child like yours needs to be removed immediately. Otherwise, my son has to sit next to her every single day, and frankly, I'm terrified she might rub off on him, that I don't want him becoming slower because of proximity to a child like yours. The words hit me like a physical blow. A child like yours. Rub off on him. Slower. My daughter is not contagious. I said, my voice very quiet. She's a 5-year-old girl who loves birds and puzzles and deserves to be in school just as much as your son. My son's father is a senior partner at Ashford and Sterling, the woman said, her voice hardening. I've already called the principal. I've already spoken to the other mothers. We're drafting a petition. Your daughter will be out of this school by the end of the week. You can either cooperate or we'll make this very, very difficult for you. The line went dead and I sat in my home office, my phone trembling in my hand, my vision blurring with tears of rage and helplessness. This woman, Patricia Ashford-Hale, had filmed my daughter without consent, diagnosed her from a 30-second video, and was now organizing a campaign to have her expelled. Not because Abby had done anything wrong, because Abby was different, because Abby's presence made her uncomfortable, because she was terrified her precious son might somehow be contaminated by proximity to a child who didn't fit neatly into the mold. I called the school. The principal, a nervous man named Dr. Morrison, hemmed and hawed about classroom dynamics and parent concerns and the need to consider all perspectives. I hung up feeling sick. And then I remembered. The school, the prestigious Oak Ridge Academy, was owned by the Sterling Foundation. And the Sterling Foundation was run by a woman I knew very, very well. Margaret Sterling Vance was 82 years old and the most formidable person I had ever met. She had built Sterling Industries from a small textile mill into a global empire worth over $40 billion. She had raised 4 children, buried 2 husbands, and stared down a hostile takeover attempt by a rival conglomerate without blinking. And for the past 5 years, she had been my most devoted volunteer. I run a small nonprofit, the Sparrow Project, that provides legal advocacy and educational support for families of children with disabilities. Margaret had read about our work in a local newspaper and had shown up at our office one morning, unannounced, asking what she could do to help. She had been a fixture ever since, answering phones, stuffing envelopes, and using her immense network to fundraise on our behalf. She had also developed a particular fondness for Abby, who shared her love of birds. They would sit together in our backyard, Margaret pointing out sparrows and finches, Abby humming her strange, beautiful songs. Margaret had never mentioned that she owned the school that I had never asked. But now, sitting in my office with Patricia Ashford Hale's threats still ringing in my ears, I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the first ring. "Elena, what's wrong? You sound upset." I told her everything. The video, the messages, the phone call, the petition, the principal's cowardice. There was a long silence. Then Margaret said, very quietly, "I see. Give me 1 hour." The next morning, I dressed Abby in her favorite blue dress, the one with the butterfly buttons, and drove her to Oak Ridge Academy. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My heart was calm. Beside me, Abby hummed her bird songs and watched the trees blur past the window. The parking lot was full. Too full I recognized the cars, Mercedes, Range Rovers, the polished fleet of the wealthy parents who had been so eager to expel my daughter. They were all here. Patricia Ashford Hale's white Escalade was parked closest to the entrance. I took Abby's hand and walked toward the main building. The doors swung open. The lobby was packed with parents, 30 or 40 of them, clutching petitions and wearing expressions of righteous indignation. Patricia Ashford Hale stood at the front, a clipboard in her hand, her Chardonnay smile firmly in place. "There she is," Patricia said, her voice carrying across the marble floor. "The mother who thinks her special needs child has the right to disrupt our children's education." I didn't answer. I just kept walking, Abby's hand in mine. "You can't ignore us," Patricia called after me. "The petition is signed. The principal has agreed to a meeting. Your daughter's days at Oak Ridge are numbered." The door to the conference room opened. Margaret Sterling Vance walked out. She was wearing a charcoal suit and pearls, her silver hair swept back, her posture ramrod straight. Behind her came the principal, Dr. Morrison, looking like a man who had just witnessed his own execution. Behind him came a team of lawyers, 6 of them, in identical dark suits. "Ms. Ashford Hale," Margaret said, her voice ringing through the silent lobby. "I've reviewed your petition, and I've also reviewed the security footage from the kindergarten classroom. Your son, Bradley, spent the entire morning throwing crayons at other children and screaming when the teacher asked him to share. My granddaughter, Abby, spent the morning sitting quietly and participating in group activities. If any child in that classroom is disruptive, it is not the one you've been targeting." Your granddaughter?" Patricia's face went white. "But her last name is Vance, not Sterling. I am a Sterling. Her mother is a Sterling. The name on the building is Sterling." Margaret's smile was cold. "Did you really think you could expel my granddaughter from my own school?" The lobby erupted. Parents who had been holding petitions now dropped them. Supporters who had rallied behind Patricia now backed away, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. Patricia herself stood frozen, her clipboard trembling in her manicured hands. Furthermore, Margaret continued, the legal team here has documented every message you sent to my daughter, every threat, every act of harassment. The video you took of a minor child without consent, which is a felony in this state, the school will be filing a restraining order against you this afternoon. Your son will be transferred to another classroom, effective immediately, and you... She stepped closer to Patricia, her voice dropping to a whisper that still somehow carried across the entire lobby. You will learn that there is no petition in the world powerful enough to protect you from a grandmother defending her family. Patricia dropped the clipboard. She turned and fled toward the exit, her heels clicking desperately against the marble, her supporters scattered behind her. The lobby emptied, leaving only the lawyers, the principal, and the two of us, Margaret and me, standing together with Abby between us. Abby looked up at Margaret and said, very clearly, Grandma Bird. Margaret knelt down, her eyes glistening. Yes, sweetheart. Grandma Bird, and no one is ever going to hurt you again. The aftermath was swift. Patricia Ashford Hale's husband was a senior partner at Ashford and Sterling, one of the firms that handle Margaret's corporate legal work. By the end of the week, his partnership had been restructured. Patricia withdrew her son from Oak Ridge Academy and moved the family to a smaller town in another state. The last I heard, she had joined the PDA there and was telling anyone who would listen about the cruel billionaire who had ruined her life for no reason. Abby stayed at Oak Ridge. She flourished. With Margaret's support, the school implemented new training for teachers on neurodiversity and inclusion. The Sparrow Project expanded its reach, opening satellite offices in 3 new cities. And I learned something about myself that I had forgotten. I was not just Abby's mother. I was a Sterling, and Sterlings did not bow.